So, you know what I wrote this morning? This is kind of interesting. I wrote about, practicing 3-4 hours a day,
Yep.
which I usually don't do because I'm too busy doing stuff, which is weird because you know what my day is like. Sometimes, I'll play for 6-7 hours teaching, right, and playing, or going to the studio and playing. But when you just do a concentrated 3 hours of, no, I'm practicing here, I'm working at something, it takes a big chunk out of your day. And what I realized is, if you look at my book, some pages are just filled with thoughts and reflection, where if I'm actually practicing, actually recording, actually doing stuff, there's not a lot of commentary. There's no time to reflect on it. It's just a thing.
Let's see. You good? You feel comfortable?
How's my hair?
Great. Yeah.
Okay, good. I guess we're good to go. I had a very interesting childhood. I'm writing my memoir, and the very first pages, literally, are about my sister, my first best buddy, right? And I lost her when I was really young. She passed from cancer, and that really shaped my whole life as a kid. I think I was kind of alone after that, and I ended up with one of those kind of imaginations where I had imaginary friends, and I was trouble. I was big trouble. So that growing up period for me was adventurous. It was a little crazy, but I was trouble. I was trouble for my mother. I was a runaway. But through all of it, I always knew I was loved. My mother was an artist, and my father a singer. He was an opera singer. I learned very early about the arts. Some of my first recollections was sitting on Howard Hanson's lap. Howard Hanson was one of the great composers of the 19th and 20th centuries. William Warfield was at the house. These wonderfully talented, amazing people. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, other than it was just a great upbringing. I loved playing and enjoying singing and all that. It was kind of a beautiful thing. So when I was very young, I was adventurous, too much so. I would run away. I ran away a lot. And the cops would always bring me back. I was a bad kid. I flunked second grade. I always tell my grandchildren, I loved second grade so much. I did it twice. So it was a rough start. But then this wonderful thing sort of happened where we moved out to Henrietta, New York. And it changed my life. It changed my life. Met a whole new group of friends. They're wonderful. Played a lot of baseball and started playing the guitar. That was the one thing that changed my life.
Todd and I cut our teeth together on the road, both fresh out of college. We did some touring together for almost 3 years in a group that was knocking on the door, looking for a national record contract. Got very, very close, but no banana, as they say. And shortly after that group reformulated and it changed personnel, Todd and I left around the same time. I went back to college. I was drawn to a career in classical percussion. And he formed his first band and hit the road and started his storied career.
What was the band you guys had together?
It was an oldies group called the Stomping Suede Greasers.
We formed a band and started playing, and all of a sudden I had this creative outlet for stuff, and I wrote songs for us.
We toured heavily for almost 3 years, self-produced our own record, actually did a demo album for Decca Records, a major label back then, and it was shelved. But we learned an awful lot as kids, really, looking back. We were in our early 20s, about the music business and about, the fact that if you put together any type of touring operation, right? Ours happened to be in music. You're starting a small business, and you have to run it very efficiently.
It's incredible. And I think that, and then playing in the school orchestra and band, I played the trumpet poorly. Fortunately, I did play the trumpet. Because when it came time to choose a college, my father gave me some great advice, which I did not take. But the great advice was this: you can always act, you can always play. Get yourself a job you can count on. So I went to school to be a teacher. I didn't like it. In my sophomore year, I got out of that program and went into composition. So I was a full-time composition major, and I'll tell you what, people at college said, you'll never make a living as a composer. Hey, guess who was wrong about that? I was touring with this rock and roll band, right, doing, old oldies, right? And all the time I was writing, for that band, and I was writing oldies, right? And we released a bunch of songs, had a hit, which was kind of fun. Our manager at the time said, look, we should really break you off and do some honest to goodness, let's get your career going, right? You're a songwriter, that's what you gotta do. So I was leaving the band, and I told him, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. Let's take our time, find somebody to replace me. And just about that time, it was actually my brother, who was the drummer in the band, said, hey, if he's going, I'm out, So we helped them find some new people for that band, the old rock and roll revival band. And we said, okay, we gotta put a band together. The first place I went was Potsdam, New York, Crane School of Music. Home of some great musicians, some wonderful people. I knew the college well. I knew the quality of the musicians that they were putting out, and I knew a lot of these folks that were going to school there. So Sean and I went up there and we did auditions. And one of the very first auditions was my friend Doug Moncrief. He was a freshman, I think, when I was a senior. I was graduating, And I knew him, but I'd never heard him sing or play, right? He'd come out to see me play. And as soon as he opened his mouth, it was over. He said, okay, this is the guy. So Doug joined the band. One of my dear friends, Desi Denoyers, had graduated, great bass player, joined the band. He was a no-brainer. And then along came a keyboard player, Billy. And the game plan was not so much to have the Todd Hoban band, because that wasn't really what I was after. What I was after was, no, I'm a songwriter. I'm just going to write songs. I'm going to develop my career. And my manager, I did a lot of things. I was in Nashville a lot during that time period. I went to New York City, auditioned for a television series. Didn't get the part, but Wally Gold said, hey, did you ever think about starting a band? I go, good idea, So there, I had a backup band, basically. And what they did, they formed a band, a 4-person band that played covers, traveled around, and then whenever I did a show, they were my band. They were my backup band. So it was Todd Hoban and Mad Stop, Potsdam backwards, right? And we went along that way for a little while, but I'll be honest with you, the band, Mad Stop, hated doing what they had to do, which was basically play weeks in Canada, weeks in clubs, playing in, godforsaken places, doing covers, right? And then every once in a while they get to do a show with me, right? They liked that. They hated the other stuff. So it was Doug and the guys in that band that said, look, let's just bag this Mad Stop thing. Let's be a band. Let's play. And it was really that band, Doug Moncrief being incredible leader, singer, that we sat down and said, okay, we're the Todd Hoban band, let's go. And that's how the band formed. Billy went back to New York, but the original band was Sean, me, Doug, and Desi. And that's the way we were. We just went out and we started playing concerts, recording, started recording almost immediately. It took a few years before we got into the swing of things and found ourselves a great producer. Before our first album came out, it was 4 years, something like that. And that's how the band started. It started with auditions and finding these great people to play with.
My name is Tom Honan. I am the executive producer at Live Space Entertainment here in Syracuse. It's a company I started about 20-something years ago. Well, I'll tell you how I first saw Todd. And this was back in the 70s. When I was in college, I went to SUNY Brockport. And in May, the college had this big outdoor surprise festival. We'd wake up, there's a stage, and all these people would come out, thousands of people for the spring break. And the night went on, all these bands, and then this rock and roller dude band was out there. And I thought, wow, what is this? You know, Springsteen in those days was beginning to make his mark, make a lot of noise, and I thought this is very similar to a Springsteen show. You know, 4 hours, high energy, running around. And this guy with hair and a big black beard was running around the stage. And the next thing I knew, he was climbing up the light trusses and the light structure with a guitar on his back. And I thought, wow, this is great to be in college. You know, I love this. This is awesome stuff. And it turned out to be Todd Hoban Band. And that was in the 70s. And then life goes on. It was 20 years later that I moved here and kept hearing Todd's name. I saw posters, Todd's playing here, Todd Hoban Band over here, and I thought, does this guy live here? And it turns out that he does. And over the years, I got to meet him, and I went through my archives, which is a big box of junk, and I found the poster from the Brockport thing, and I was able to give that to him.
So 1978 comes along, my first release. Now, the weird thing about this is I'd already been in the music business for like 14 years. That's the way it used to be. You have to work your way up in the old days. You don't just, go into the basement and make a record. After touring all those years and then putting the band together, and my band had been together for like 4 or 5 years, right? And we started recording our songs in a little shed out back of my house, and that's how we learned how to write and make records. Making a record, you really needed to have the support of a record label or, big producers, a big studio and all that. So we volunteered to be guinea pigs for Bill Murphy. Bill Murphy was a graduate student at Newhouse, Syracuse University. And we just went in and he started recording us as we were the guinea pigs, right? And he really loved the music. We loved him as a producer. He was spectacular. And we just kept recording, and then we started turning up, 3, 4, 5 songs. And he was the one that made the decision, you know what? Let's make an album. Let's really take a shot at this. And we would go in late at night and record all night long until the morning. And Bill was just this crazy, graduate student that took a liking to us and really, really wanted to make a great record. Got to the point where, we got a record. Now we're gonna have to mix this thing out, do a lot of stuff that's really complex. Probably can't just do it at Newhouse. Let's find a studio. We found one in Rose Hill Recording right in central New York, and we were able to record and master this album. And wow, I think about this stuff. Went to New York, Bob Claremountain. There was another wonderful mastering engineer in New York City. I went to New York to put the final master together, all with Bill Murphy's help. It got a little expensive, because now all of a sudden we weren't getting free overnight studio time at Newhouse. We were going to real studios, spending big chunks of change. Fortunately, the band was playing a lot. We played a lot of shows. It made us really tired because we would work 5, 6 nights a week, and then whenever we could get into the studio and mix, master, get that record to come out. It was 1978, and we released it. And the shock was, one morning waking up to the clock alarm, right? The radio came on. And it was me, one of my songs. And we just woke up, we were like ecstatic, we couldn't believe it. It's like, oh my God, that's us. We're we're on the radio. You know, talk about a shot of adrenaline, right? And I'll tell you, that first record really launched us in an entirely different direction because now we were recording artists. We had hits. Oh, the first one I ever heard of myself playing on the radio was I Hate You, right? The most unlikely song you could ever imagine, you know, waking you up in the morning, right? It was like insane, right? And so that was the first hit. Then New York Country Song hit. A few others, we're starting to get airplay, right? Now with the airplay, came a really important decision. And the decision was, do you want to be the biggest act in Central New York, or do you want to be the biggest act in the world? We chose the world. Stupidly.
You're back in the studio with Music Cues. I'm Holly, and our featured artist this week is the Todd Hoban Band. Todd is currently working on another upcoming album. This is going to be a live album, as well as some video projects. So, coming up, some video by Todd Hoban.
From New York are all crazy. Especially right here in Syracuse tonight.
You know, people come up and they say, hey, listen, I want to break into the business, you know, but I got this job. I say, okay, you have to be prepared to leave at a moment's notice to do the job, right? It's very, very difficult to be an artist. It's almost impossible. One of the things that makes it impossible is at the beginning of your career, it's really hard to make money. It's really hard because nobody wants to hear your stuff. They want to hear you do something they know, right? Find a job where you can leave at a moment's notice. There's a lot of jobs out there like that. Bartender, waiter. In my case, it was being a studio musician. You know, I was able to book time and be able to be in the studio and make stuff, and then, gee, if I had to leave, do a little rescheduling, I can do it.
We thought we were doing everything right, and we did an awful lot right back then. But then again, the music business was very, very different. It was the analog world. Records were an oil product. There were many major labels. Disc jockeys broke records at major radio stations around the country, mostly AM radio stations. I'm talking about the first half of the 1970s here. Automation hadn't taken over yet. There was no such thing as a booth with a turntable in it in a nightclub. The discotheque craze hadn't started yet. It was really the classical rock and roll era, and we were part of its first resurgence. We learned a lot from the major stars that we backed up and wrote our own material in that vein.
So, I was actually in the studio, and I was working, and I got a call from my manager. He said, "Can you be at Mid-Hudson Arena tomorrow night to open for the Kinks?" Yes, the answer has to be yes. Called the band. We are going to be in Mid-Hudson. Bus leaves tomorrow morning, first thing. Everybody's on the bus. We're going down to play a concert. The answer was yes. When the door opens, you go through the door. You have to prepare yourself to be ready to go through that door when it opens. It opened for me. Mid-Hudson Arena, the Kinks. What had happened was their warm-up act, I will not tell you who it was, an English performer. Ray, Dave didn't like the band. They said, "You suck, go home." Unfortunately for him, his home was on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So he got kicked off the bus, had to find his own way back home. And the manager, Kinks manager, said to the promoter of the next show down the line, "We need an opening act. Do you have anybody in mind?" And it just so happened, Magic City Productions said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got a guy who's got a hit right now on the radio station in Mid-Hudson, in Poughkeepsie, New York, Kingston. Yeah, it's a hit. So let me call and see if he can play on the show." So they said, okay. The nice thing about being a warm-up act is usually it's a throwaway. The record company will put somebody on the roster on a show and the money is terrible. But for me, I sell seats, right? So we got paid good money. We went down, we played the Mid-Hudson Arena. Right after the show, Ray Davies says, "Man, this band is great. They fit us. They're incredible. Ask them if they can do the rest of the American tour." What was my answer? Yes. And so, yeah, we went out and we toured with the Kinks around America, playing a heck of a lot of shows. It was a blast, absolutely incredible. But we were ready to go. The door opened twice. First night, and then we're good enough for the rest of the tour. Got to be ready.
Do you want to talk a bit about how the band ended?
It's not hard to talk about now, but it was impossible to talk about back then. In 2018, I had a debilitating stroke and had to go through that whole trauma of realizing, first of all, that I was in real trouble and not believing it, and then saying, "Doc, what's next?" And he said, "Well, you know, you're in really good shape." I said, "Great. I got a couple of concerts coming up. Do you think you can get me out of here next week? Can I be ready to play?" He laughed. He said, "No, you're going to be down for months." I go, "What? It's impossible." He said, "You've had a stroke, right?" Yeah, and here I am lying there with his hand not working, and the whole left side kind of shot. And he said, "You're going to have an operation. You're in great health. I can do the operation." And basically, it was an ischemic stroke, which means I was not getting blood flow to my brain, right? And unfortunately, it was on both sides, right? So there's a lot of issues that kind of happened because of that. But literally the next day, I went in for surgery, and he cleared out my carotid artery on this side. And I started to, the very next literally the day of my operation, my kids come in and say, here's your guitar, get busy, right? Wow, you know, I picked my hand up and put it on the guitar and tried to move my hand. It wasn't doing so very well. So that was the beginning of my recovery. My recovery started the second that I was out of surgery and was aware. And I never stopped. I never let up. 8 to 12 hours a day. And it shook us. It was pretty bad. But I was able to recover enough to get out and start playing again. And we had some of the best shows of our lives that last year of the band. Tremendous shows. Huge. Leading up to the very last show we played as that band with Doug. 2,000 people. Great original night. We just played and the crowd was great. And I remember we finished the night and on the last note of the last song, fireworks went off and everything. It was like incredible. And we were looking forward to the next chapter, which was Doug was going to retire from his job, right? And he and I were going to just be writing and doing songwriter nights and pushing forward. And he died shortly after that. And that changed us. We had obligations, big ones, you know, television appearance. We had the Benny Mardonis event, a few other shows that, you know, we were committed to, and we played them without Doug. Musically, hey, we pulled it off. We're a good band. And it was just the four of us without Doug. And after a few shows, we realized that it was impossible. It was not the same. Audiences, I think, were fine. You know, all the songs were there. Bruce really picked up a lot of slack, sang some great lead vocals, and a lot of harmony, and it was all there. But for us, looking over to our left, where Doug was impossible. He wasn't there. So for us, that was it. We're gone. And we said, we're done. You know, the band is an interesting thing. We're not friends. We're brothers. And that brotherhood is a bond built over 50 years with all the familial problems, you know, but all the familial, incredible bond. So,
my name is Brett Hoban. My role in the studio is to do everything, and my main instrument is bass guitar, though I pride myself on learning just enough of every instrument to play it on a record if it has to happen. Yeah. Except drums. That's hard.
How would you describe your childhood?
People ask me this a lot, and I have like a really stock answer, and it's not very exciting. It's like, he's just my dad. It's the dad I had when I grew up, and I love my dad. And I thought it was just normal to have a dad like that. You know, I don't have any other experience than the one I do. I love my dad. I still love hanging out with them. You know, we talk all the time. It's like we spend all our time, we spend time creatively. We spend time, you know, bitching about stuff. We spend time doing everything. It's just, my experience for me is very typical, but I do kind of feel like it might be a bit different than other people's experience. But, you know, I do find myself being very grateful for the upbringing I had with my father. You know, I don't think it could be any better. I didn't know anything else. It did not affect me at all. That's just my experience. I never looked at a different family and thought, you know, those parents are around all the time. Wouldn't that be nice? I never thought that once in my life. It was just the experience I had. You know, I was surrounded by my brother and sisters, never lonely. You know, I think what I have that other children might not is like how much we looked forward to the time where he would come home in the middle of the night, you know. I have fond memories of him coming home in the middle of the night. And I don't remember not seeing him for a while, but I do remember him having a beard, and he'd always shave his beard when he got home. And I remember just being in the bathroom watching him shave in the middle of the night. And those are very fond memories. What I do not have are memories of him being gone and regretting that. All I have are good memories of when he was around.
So 20 years ago or so, we'd gone through a few bass players, you know. Greeley Ford, one of the greatest bass players on earth. Mark Novak, who has since passed away. And so Brett, my son, started playing with us. And he's been with us all these 20 years, you know, or more. And it's hard to describe this. He's my son, but he joins the band. Oh, now he's a brother. And that's the way it is. You know, your band is your band of brothers. And that's a bond that lasts forever.
He described your relationship. He said it transformed in a way.
Yeah, no, I think it's a non-typical father-son relationship, 100%. And I think 100% of that is a good thing. You know, it's definitely more, saying it more of like a maybe being brothers is a pretty good way to put it, I think. Yeah, I like that.
I am Sherry Giroux, and I am the donor engagement manager here for CNY Jazz, which is a non-for-profit organization. I'm also an aspiring cabaret jazz singer, and that is how I kind of landed here in this woolly of events with Todd Hoban and Larry Luttinger. I didn't really get started until I was in middle school and I was 12 years old, and I tried out for a musical, and that's when I got the bug. I really got the bug. I traveled into Manhattan a lot, and I finally got to see shows at my leisure. You know, it wasn't like a trip, you know what I mean? So when I started to really go to Broadway shows and get my half-price tickets, and I started to really feel the city, I started to relate lyrics. I wasn't just singing anymore. It was life happenings, life events, but never as serious as when I hit tragedy 5 years ago. I basically, you know, unfortunately lost my stepson and my husband months apart. And if I didn't go back to singing, I don't really know what would have happened. And if I didn't have the encouragement from Todd, I don't really know, because I was pretty lost. Once we decided and I got into the studio, and he's like, "You're gonna make an album." And I said, "No, I'm not. No one's gonna listen. No one's gonna buy it, blah, blah, blah." He says, "We're gonna make an album. We're gonna use karaoke tracks. And we're gonna make an album. We're gonna manipulate those to make it sound not so tinned, not so canned." And I was so intimidated. And I'm weak at this point because I've had all this tragedy. I don't have an identity. I don't know who I am. And I get in that booth, and he just gradually encouraged me to show the real me through those lyrics. And now every time I sing, it's a lyric that really gets me. It's not about the performance. So if I didn't have all that tragedy, I probably would just be very surface. I think that the tragedy mixed in with the music made me a better me, definitely.
He's an artist through and through to the truest meaning. So he lives to create. Some artists have one way of presenting their art. He's got several, but the really true point here is that he is a living, breathing artist. He is looking to create and to share those creations and to encourage other people to do the same thing. And that is the magic part that we'll talk about his teaching. But so as an artist, he is a songwriter, musician, visual artist, storyteller, and his art in the studio as a producer, that's an art, to get the best out of another artist. So that's another situation where he is encouraging art from someone else. And he can see inside of you what kind of art you might have that you may not know you have. And that's the magic of being him. He is definitely always looking at someone else, how he can make them better. And at the same time, he just lives to create. And he's living a very creative life.
They were hitting me up for legacy stuff. He said, you know, Todd, you're not going to be alive forever, and you know, you should start, you know, investing a few $1,000s a year at the college so we can, you know, have a little legacy for you up there. Yeah. I was like, what? Practice room? A display case? What are you talking about? I don't want nothing. My legacy is assured. It's assured. It's all tied to the kids. Okay, so what I wanted to do today, first of all, was Caterpillar and then speed drill. And the reason is because we're so busy. I mean, when I say we, you crazy, me, I'm nuts, I'm off the page. And literally every student, this is the last thing on the list to do, you know, because this is the fun stuff, right? So you got to take care of the papers, the class, all that crap. And so what happens is the thing on the bottom of the list usually just falls off. So to prevent that from happening, I think what you have to do, what I do, is I give myself 5 minutes a day that I insist on. You know, I insist on the 5 minutes. No, picking up the guitar. And sometimes it doesn't happen until very late. And that's not good. So now I've pushed it to early. Literally, I get up and I'll do a little. So let's do the Caterpillar at a good clip. About that speed. 1, 2, ready to go. Beautiful. Next string. Relax a little bit. Relax, relax. 1, 2, ready, A. Good. We're going to do one more thing, because I'm watching. You got a little bit of a rest of your hand on there, and if you put some air between the neck and your fingers, then they're free to go to play better, and you get that nice horizontal thing. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Oh, that's beautiful. Don't collapse. Keep it up there. A little more air. A little slower. It's like, I'm too busy, right? No matter how busy I get, I still go, you know what? I'm going to pick up the guitar and I'm going to do some stuff. And that is good because, well, we just spent 5 minutes. That's it, yeah. Right? Hands tired, good. Do it later, maybe.
Children of the 60s, with the flowers in your hair. Wonder I must be dreaming, there's some magic left out there. Your dreams are slowly fading, and your hair is turning gray. Will you have a piece of love? Deserves another day. Turn it on, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on, never let it fade away. Turn it on, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on, never let it fade away. Turned on, freaked out, love struck you, think you'd sing it a different song. Carrying on to the night in search of where you were going. Flower power and your finest hour, playing a song louder than ever heard before. Where are all the children with their hair in flowers? Yeah, more than ever we could use on take no crazy, be a free love, do it up, so don't give forever cause.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I believe strongly that you live in your moment right now, this very second. And the past can only inform us about what went right and what went wrong. But always, I'm looking to the future, always thinking about tomorrow, thinking about next year, the year after that. And I think that's a really good way to go through life, thinking that it's not going to be over tomorrow, it's not going to be over next year, the year after that. I know that I am in the last act. That I do know. But I also know that I don't want to sit around waiting for death. What I want to do is work right up to it and then see what's next.
Why should I worry? Why should I care? Why should I even try? Why try to hurry or try to play fair? We're just learning to live in a lie. Where are we going? What have we done? Why does the world spin around? Rivers keep flowing, wild rivers run, and we all know we're running aground. Please, please, before I grow old, true.